Hello, beautiful women. It's Claudia from Nourish by Claudia here, the founder of the Recover from HA Support Group and the Period Comeback Recovery Protocol. And today I'm here to discuss a topic that is very important for women like you that want to get pregnant, also because they want to have a child. So the question is, how do you know if you're ovulating? How do you know that if you're ovulating and if you're closer or not to getting your period back? So we're going to discuss two separate things today. One is how to track your cervical mucus, what is the cervical mucus, and also how to track your basal body temperature, which is your core temperature. There are a couple of things that I also would like to address before getting started. Hypothalamic amenorrhea is not a diagnosis of infertility. It is instead a state of subfertility, meaning that your body is absolutely capable of having a baby. It's just that at the moment it's going through a very rough patch and a tough time. And all the supports that you can get from the HA community and the period comeback protocol can actually get you to a place where your body is restored and nourished enough so that you can really start the life that you want. Also, I would like to mention that women that have suffered in the past from hypothalamic amenorrhea has managed to go on and have multiple kids and have also managed to have multiple natural pregnancies. It has also been shown by the research studies that women with hypothalamic amenorrhea, they can get pregnant also later on in life because of the high number of follicles that are stored in their ovaries. It is also women with hypothalamic amenorrhea has incredible success when it comes to freezing their eggs because once again, they have plenty of follicles lying around. Not all of them are top-notch and top quality, but there are still a few things that can be that you can do to improve your ovarian quality. At the same time, I also would like to remind you that if you don't have a menstrual cycle, it's going to be impossible for you to get pregnant, especially if you are not ovulating. You can still do so by using medications and by going through the IVF route. At the same time, it's much easier to recover your body before getting pregnant, so that you're gonna make sure that you're gonna be able to sustain the pregnancy and you're not gonna suffer from any side effects throughout the pregnancy and also in the postpartum phase. It has also been shown that women that are currently suffering with hypothalamic amenorrhea has less chances of succeeding when doing IVF and have a very thin urethra, which can cause lots of side effects, especially when trying to have a baby, because a thin urethra can not only lead you to urinate very often, especially in the middle of the night, but it's also more susceptible to infections. And obviously we want to stay away from UTI and different type of infections when trying for a pregnancy, because we don't want to bring any virus or any bacteria that can affect our pregnancy and the outcome of the pregnancy and the health of the baby. Perfect. So having said that, I really would like to focus on discussing cervical mucus and basal body temperature today. So the first one is cervical mucus. Cervical mucus is basically the easiest way for us to really understand what we're doing, what our body is doing, and how healthy our period is. If you look at textbook, a regular normal menstrual cycle is somewhere between 28 to 30 days long. Unfortunately, that's not the case for most women, and definitely not the case for women suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea, POI, and PCOS, and perimenopause. But normally, if you look at the textbook or if you rely on the apps that can actually track your menstrual cycle, you will notice that you should be ovulating at the 14 days mark. That's unfortunately unlikely in most cases. And once again, it really depends on your situation, which is why I'm here educating you today on how you can track your menstrual cycle so you can understand the pattern of what is going on in your body, for your health. There are so many apps that you can use in terms of tracking your cycle. I used Kindara, the free app, and it was very, very helpful for me in the beginning. I just then moved to My Fertility, which I'm loving the app right now, but you can choose the app that you want. You can ask in the Recover from HA support group for apps that are user-friendly, or you can basically find your own. You can also track your CM and your BBT on pen and paper. And if you want an easy access to a fertility tracker, just send me a message after you watch this video and I can help you by sending you that. So the cervical mucus, why do we need it in the first stage? So originally, like from a very primitive standpoint, we need fertile mucus to make sure that the sperm can survive inside our body for at least up to for 5 days, because the cervical mucus is very nourishing, and by improving and by welcoming the sperm, a woman has higher chances of getting pregnant. So how does the cervical mucus look like? Normally, once again, if you look at the 28-day cycles, you will find that at the beginning of the period, the mucus is a little bit creamy and sticky. Definitely, it doesn't have an egg white consistency. It looks more like a creamy lotion that you can gently apply to your body until it gets absorbed into the skin. And that how the cervical mucus normally looks between day 5 and day 12 or 13 of your menstrual cycle. Then when your estrogen level increases and your LH surges and you approach ovulation, the cervical mucus changes and becomes slightly different and more fertile. So it looks like egg white consistency. So it's like you crack an egg, and that's the kind of the look of the cervical mucus that you expect. So basically it's quite sticky, it's transparent, and you can move it between your fingers, and it's very stretchy. At the same time, not every single woman is different. Some women, they do have egg white cervical mucus between 2 to 7 days. Other women that have it just for 1 day. Other women that have a very fluid consistency to their cervical mucus, and it's more watery than egg whitey and sticky. So it's really important to understand how your body present the cervical mucus, so then you can interpret what's going on within your own body. Also, I would like to remind you that genetic plays a big role as much as aging, stressors, and different life circumstances. So, for example, if your cervical mucus was looking one way 10 years ago, it may be very different right now, especially if you have been suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea and you have been aging over the past decade. So always keep that into the back of your mind. The second part of the cycle is slightly different for, once again, for every single woman. So after the egg white watery consistency, the cervical mucus normally tends to go back to that dry lotion quality, and then progesterone rises. And progesterone has a drying quality when it comes to the cervical mucus. So normally a woman becomes dry just before the menstrual cycle. During our menstrual cycle, it's really hard to detect our cervical mucus because obviously we're bleeding, but normally a woman is meant to be dry during the menstrual cycle. If a woman has very short menstrual cycle, then she can still see some cervical mucus while menstruating, because the body is already gearing up to the next create follicles. What happens in the hypothalamic amenorrhea situation, or even when a woman is suffering from PCOS? Obviously, when there is an hormonal imbalance, it's very hard to find that textbook kind of cervical mucus and kind of pattern. And every woman is gonna have a different, is gonna be in a different situation and has a different experience when it comes to tracking her own cervical mucus. But you will notice that with hypothalamic amenorrhea, your body can gear up to ovulation more than once before you actually get your menstrual cycle. So you may see that kind of body lotion consistency until you get to the egg white consistency, but it doesn't last for that long. Then you go back to being dry, to then gear up once again to produce more follicles, and you get that creamy lotion consistency once again. So the reality is that until you ovulate, it's going to be very hard for you to menstruate. In case of women suffering from PCOS, so it's very hard to tell if the ovulation occurs between day 14 and day 18 of the menstrual cycle, like all the apps are saying, and like it's written in the textbook. Some women, they may actually ovulate at around the day 24, day 35 mark. So once again, it's really important to write down all the changes that are happening in your body, so that you can bring them to a professional like I am, and we can interpret them together. Don't get discouraged. Don't compare yourself to other women and whatever you see on social media. And also, if you're tracking your menstrual cycle on an app, on a fertility app, I really invite you to get rid of the settings where it tells you when you're predicting menstruation and ovulation. It can be very disheartening. It can be very inaccurate, and ultimately it may not be helping you at all. So one thing that you can do is actually noticing what your cervical mucus is doing and write it down on a piece of paper or tracking it on an app. Second things that you could do is just actually feel how your body is it's feeling, meaning that the vulva is normally a little bit more wet and a little bit more welcoming when there is abundant cervical mucus and when you're getting close to menstruation, close to ovulation. So that's something that you can always note down in your tracker. Also, when you sit down and you go to the toilet, make sure that you wipe from back to front, and then have a look at the toilet paper. How does the cervical mucus look like? Can you actually stretch it between your hands? Can you pick it up? Can you see it? Is it abundant? Is it wide? Is it egg white? Can you interpret what's going on in the scenario? Do you find something that it's different compared to the previous months? Do you find anything that it shouldn't be there, like for example signs of spotting or a strange smell or a strange color? Just write down all these very important pieces of information, because your body is talking to you in its own language. So instead of asking around what other women are perceiving, are tracking their cervical mucus and what they're seeing, and instead of relying on, once again, that textbook notion that after every 14 days you should be able to ovulate and have sex and have a baby, just come back to what is happening with you, because your body is talking to you. In regards to the fertile window, that's a very interesting scenario, because when we were very young, I don't know about you, but certainly about me, I was really scared about the idea of getting pregnant. And my idea was, I'm going to have sex and I'm going to remain pregnant. The reality is that we have between 5 to 7 days to get pregnant, that we have that window of opportunity every single cycle. But for someone that is suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea or even PCOS, that window of opportunity can be 5 to 6 days a year, or 5 to 6 days every 3 months. So it could be extremely different, which is why it's incredibly important to check your cervical mucus, track your basal body temperature if you want to get pregnant, in terms of understanding when is a good time to have sex. In any case, having sex quite regularly, it is actually important, because you increase the level of oxytocin, you create a very strong bond with your partner, and you also make sure that the sperm of your partner remains quite active and healthy. There is no point after having sex to put the feet up on the wall. That's already too late. The sperm know exactly what to do once it is inside our body. So if you're in the fertile window, if there is enough nourishing cervical mucus, the sperm is gonna be allowed to travel and then to fertilize an egg. If that's not the case, and the pH of the vulva is like, or the vagina is not exactly where it's meant to be, if there is not enough mucus, if it's not the right time of the month, then doesn't matter how many minutes you spend with the legs up the wall, you're not gonna be able to sustain a pregnancy. Second things that I really would like to discuss is the basal body temperature. So there is this huge misconceptions that when you see the temp rising, that's when you should be having sex, because that's when you're ovulating. The reality is that if that's when you're having sex, you're missing out completely on your window of opportunity, on the fertile window, I mean. So normally our basal body temperature, which is our core temperature, remains quite low during the first phase of the cycle, and it increases after ovulation when progesterone increases, because progesterone has that warming quality, because it's meant to protect our body and also to warm up our body just in case that we get pregnant. So if you see that your temperature goes slightly up and down through the first part of the cycle, it's very normal. And once you get past ovulation, you will find that there is a surge in temperature. The temperature is going to remain quite high for a period of time, and then it's going to come down if you menstruate, or then it's gonna remain pretty high if you get pregnant. How to track your basal body temperature? So you can use a normal thermometer. Just make sure that it has 2 decimal places. The best way to track your body temperature is in the morning, always at the same time, before do anything else. So before drinking a glass of water, before cuddling with your partner, before going for a wee. And the idea is also that you would need to sleep for at least 4 hours consistently, cannot say that word, sorry, before tracking your basal body temperature. Otherwise, it's gonna be quite inaccurate. There are some ways that you can work around it. You can increase the temperature by 0.5 if you wake up half an hour before, or decrease it by 0.5 if you wake up half an hour later. But the best way to track your body temperature, if you know that you cannot rely on tracking the temperature at the same time, and if you know that your night is pretty disrupted, then you can definitely use a wearable device. I just wrote down the name because I always forget it, and I used to have it a couple of years ago, which is called Temp Drop. So it's like a wearable device. You just have to remind yourself to put it on before you go to sleep, and it basically gave you an average of your temperature through the night. So it's not going to give you the exact precise temperature of the moment when you wake up in the morning, but it's just going to give you an average of all night long. It's less exhausting because you don't have to really remember to anything apart from wearing it before going to sleep. You can base yourself on that number that you get, and then you're going to be able to see a pattern. And when is the wearable device recommended is when you are a busy mom of small children, and you find yourself waking up through the night quite consistently, when you're suffering from broken sleep, when you have been suffering from insomnia or impacted sleep quality, or when you're a shift worker, for example, because in that scenario, it's very hard to track the temperature always at the same time. How can you compare the two? So the idea is that you put all these informations in one place, which could be the app or can be your piece and paper note with a fertility tracker. And you will notice that your cervical mucus is going to be egg white and stretchy or fluid and transparent, just at the same time, a couple of days before you see a temperature rise. We do suffer from anovulatory cycles. So in a healthy woman that does not suffer from hypothalamic amenorrhea, that does not suffer from PCOS or any sort of severe hormonal imbalance, and you know what I mean by severe, diagnosed hormonal imbalance, I shall say, those type of women, they still tend to have at least 2 to 3 anovulatory cycles per year. The reality is that you can still menstruate without reaching ovulation if the endometrium lining grows enough that it needs then to be shed, but you're not going to be able to get pregnant, which is why some women, especially when they have been suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea for a long period of time and they've been exhausting their options, they use medications such as clomiphene and Femara just to promote that ovulation and to be able to then have sex and get pregnant at the right time. I think that I've covered all the things that I wanted to discuss. In terms of women suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea, tracking your cervical mucus and tracking your BBT, it's important, not so much at the beginning of the journey, because at the beginning of the journey, normally there is really not that much to report, and that can be a very exhausting things to do and quite overwhelming and discouraging. It is, although, very recommended towards the end of the journey, when all the things have been put in place and your body is feeling nourished and you have work on your readjusting the micronutrients and macronutrients deficiency, after you have been taking the right supplements for a long period of time, after you work on your mindset, decrease your stress level in general, perceived and not perceived, and after you have changed your training routine if you had one in the first place. So after you have ticked off all the boxes that I've just mentioned, then it could be a good time for you to understand if your body is gearing up to ovulation and is gearing up to menstruation, or especially if you're trying to get pregnant. I really hope that this video was useful. If it was, just leave a comment below. I would love to see your beautiful faces on the Recover from HA support group if you're not part of it already. When I'm recording this video, it's going to be at the end of November 2022. So just a push for all of you that have been stuck in this journey for a long period of time. We are coming to the end of another year. So it's just a gentle reminder to prioritize the recovery journey. I had a few women this year getting pregnant, getting their period back, and feeling and starting to live the best life after really implementing all the things that we discussed during the period comeback protocol. I also had women that didn't have a menstrual cycle for 10, 13 years, 2 years, 5 years, getting pregnant within 7 weeks to 3 months. So if that's something that you really would like, if this is very important to you, I really encourage you to take the first step. Send me a message, book a call. I'm gonna pop the link in the notes below, and just make this happen. Don't waste your time. Don't wait until January. Don't wait after the holidays, because the reality is that the best time for you, especially if you're watching this video, is now that you have that level of commitment that can really help you to shift mountains. Alrighty, thank you for listening, and I'll speak with you soon. Bye for now.